Hey everyone, it's Jake's Metal Chat. Hope you're all well and welcome to episode 40 of my Metal Vault, where I will be exploring and showing you my favorite albums within heavy metal to thrash metal to death metal to black metal, doom metal, sludge metal, folk metal, you name it, all of that excellent stuff. So much more that I can do until I can just take a little bit of a break from it and then focus on other series on my channel. So for anyone that has been watching this series for a while, you do know the drill by now that I've just mentioned. For anyone brand new, welcome to my channel. Welcome to this series. It's great to have you here. And this next album, there's going to be a lot of you, and I've mentioned before, a lot of you veterans out there are going to know this album. You're going to know this band. But for anyone that doesn't, this band's all the way from Finland. They formed in 1990, so 34 years ago. And they've only released one album, but what an album it is. I am talking about Demilich. And the first time I saw them was back in 2018, and I got to see who would become two of my favorites, Necrot and Spectral Voice. And then again at Scandinavia Death Fest in 2019 in Stockholm, Sweden. And then for the final time at Filmfest in London in 2020. And I'm trying to remember specifically, I think it was because I'm looking at my pertinence set list, and I believe they played on no, they played the day before, so they would have played on the 15th of that month of that year. And this album is totally weird, but so heavy, so brutal that it was going on this list. So once again, this is Demilich. This is their 1993 album, their sole release, Nespithe. But this is the 20th anniversary of Emptiness box set. So it's got the album and also demos. So disc one that will have Nespithe on it. And disc two has all of the demos. So you can have a look there. And just the sheer amount of songs that some I won't be able to say, and some that are just stupidly long. I might actually just say some of the words. Now, before we get on to talking about the band as well as talking about the album, let's get that logo back in, which was actually done by the frontman himself, Antti Bowman, whose vocals were just totally bizarre, and I'll get into why. Some artwork here. Look at that. Very cool. More artwork there, and of course, that famous T-shirt that a lot of people should know if you grew up in the death metal scene back in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. Little band picture right there. And stuff right here. More artwork. More artwork around here, and that's pictures of them. I want to say about 2014, because Antti Bowman had a mohawk back then, but he's since grown his hair back out. And a picture of him back in the day. And I believe that is Antti right there wearing a Nocturnus the Key t-shirt. One of them wearing a Guinness shirt, and one wearing Pestilence. Because on this album it was a 4-piece, but around this time it was a 3-piece. So yeah, that is Antti, because of course we've got the microphone right next to him. Now, what do you need to know about Demilich for anyone that is not too familiar with this band? But I know you guys who are veterans, you're going to know this band. But this is for people that haven't got a clue. So They formed in Finland. I'm not even going to try and pronounce where they're from in Finland because, as you know, my pronunciation skills are shit. They formed in 1990. They released 4 demos before releasing this album. So they had Regurgitation of Blood and the fourth Instructive Tales of Decomposition from 1991. And in 1992, they had 2 demos then. Somewhere Inside the Bowels of Emptiness and The Echo. So you can see that with some of the song titles of like songs, demos, they got some really long songs. And this album right here from 1993 was released on the 8th of February of that year on Necropolis Records. This was re-released by Spot Records, which is the label they are currently on at this moment in time. So let's talk about these guys about the songs, the guitar structures, and just the overall vibe of this album. Again, the 20th anniversary edition of the album, but still. So we start off with When the Sun Drank the Weight of Water. Now that is a great opener to the song, one of my favorite tracks from the album. I'll be getting into the other ones that are my favorites as well. So really great opener, and then after that we got the 16th Tooth Sun of 14 4 regional dimensions, still unnamed. Don't worry, there's going to be more of a mouthful in a minute on for the second to last song, the first to last song even. Inherited Bowel Levation. I'll just say that for now. Reduce Without Any Effort. That's track number 3. All really great songs, all just weirdly done in their own little way. The Echo Replacement, which is track number 4, and that's followed by the Putrefying Road in the 19th Extremity, Somewhere Inside the Bowels of Emptiness, Within the Chamber of Whispering Eyes, and then on to And You'll Remain in Pieces in Emptiness. I'm not even going to try and say track number 8, but that's the instrumental, and I'm not even going to try and say it. If you want to have a look at it, you try and say it yourself. I'll show you in a minute. Number 9, now that's the mouthful one, I think, on this one. But a cracking tune nonetheless. The Echo is one of my favourites as well, along with When the Sun Drank the Weight of Water. I like this one because it's such a great track, and also it's got a stupidly long title. The planet that once used to absorb flesh in order to achieve divinity and immortality suffocated to the flesh that it desired. There you go. I told you they were going to have long songs, quite twistery songs. So, tongue twister songs. Songs that are tongue twisters. I'll just say that now before I make myself look more like an idiot. And then The Cry, which is another shorter one, along with The Echo. Another one of my favorites as well. And then to finish it all off is Raped, Embalmed, Beauty, Sleep. Now, there's a song. But yeah, but track number 9, that song. Just let's say it one more time. The planet that once used to absorb flesh in order to achieve divinity and immortality suffocated to the flesh that it desired. Yeah, stupidly long songs. If you look at that and think, oh man, what else can come close to that? Carcass's album, Necroticism, Descantina Insalubrious. So there's another one. And of course, like I said, this came out in 93. This album, Heartwork, came out that same year. Individual Thought Patterns, The Spectral Sorrow, Breeding the Spawn, The Erosion of Sanity, so many different albums within death metal came out that year. The Nocturnal Silence by Necrophobic came out that year, and I think along with that album, this one got overlooked quite a bit because there were so many albums coming out of that time. And of course, a lot of the bigger bands were still releasing albums around that time as well. When death metal from the late 80s to the early 90s was just everywhere. But obviously, in the underground scene, a lot of people would have been like, who's this Demilich? I've never heard of Demilich. And they found this album. They found Nespithe and were like, okay, what the hell did I just listen to? And I'll get into why I said that. As well as the guitar structures, and absolutely phenomenal, by the way, in this album. So, guitars, bass, drums. The vocals by Antti Bowman are very bizarre. And why is that? Because they're not gutturals. It sounds like someone said it sounds like he's burping, but in some ways it sounds like he's sort of throat singing in a way. I'm getting that little bit of a vibe. You can listen to it and make up your own conclusions about it, have your own opinions about it, like what you think his vocals sound like. But yeah, his vocals sound very bizarre, but it works for this album because you never heard any vocals like that up until that point throughout death metal. You heard like raspier type of vocals, then you heard growling, then you heard gutturals. We never really heard anything that Antti was doing back then. Of course, on this album, it was a 4-piece. So Antti Bowman on guitars and vocals. And then there's Mikko on the drums. Of course, he's still currently in the band today. I believe the other two, so Billy, I think I said his name completely wrong. Billy, I'm going to say that, was the bassist from 92 to 93. And then there's don't want to try, I think it's pronounced Aki was the guitarist. No, actually, no, you're still in the band today. I thought he left. I just clicked on because I've looked at past bands and I thought it'd be there. And yeah, I've had a long weekend, so last week, so I'm not really focusing at the moment on if there's certain members. So those three are still in the band. It's just the bass player who's not. That is Jake, and he's been in the band since their reformation in 2014. Because they formed in 1990, split up in 93 after this album was released, then reformed in 2005 to 2006. 2010 did like a one-off show. And in 2014, they got back together and they've been playing this weird, out there, in your face death metal since. And they're classed as technical avant-garde death metal, and I think the avant-garde bit comes in because of how weirdly structured this album is in terms of like the guitar structures and the vocal style and just how weirdly bizarre it is. And the lyrical themes are like abstract, horror and death and all the stuff you would hear within death metal, but obviously a lot of death metal bands had different lyrical themes. Those were just really just like you hear abstract and you think, okay, very weird, far out stuff, and really fucking weird still. Nothing wrong with weird, weird. I love weird shit like that. So, you know, you read like lyrics like that, it's like, well, that's pretty weird, but with the music, goes so damn well together. And this album, man, I found out about this album, I want to say about, I'm gonna say either 2008, 2009, or maybe even 2010, somewhere between those 3 years, somewhere around that time. And I was like, when I heard Anti's vocals, I was like, okay, because usually when I hear death metal, I think it's got to be growly, snarly, guttural type of stuff. Because there was a time where I got into brutal death and I was just solely listening to brutal death, but then I got back into old school death metal and stuff like Crypt Worm, that very cavernous sound and just weird, heavy, nasty death metal. And this, it falls in that category of evil. It's quite an evil sounding album. And when you listen to it, you just think, wow, the sheer amount of evil, the sheer amount of heaviness, the sheer amount that that is on this album. It's just, no, I said it was weird and it was bizarre, but it's so well done. The amount of commitment these guys put into this album is phenomenal. It's astonishing and should not be overlooked. This album should not be overlooked. It shouldn't have been overlooked because it's such a phenomenal, monumental album within death metal in general, and it's just a fantastic, excellent album of just an absolutely fantastic death metal album from Finland. Excellent Finnish death metal, and the Finns know how to make death metal, and of course, the others, being Sweden, know how to make death metal. And Finland did a lot of different things with death metal. They made it heavy, but added melodic parts, and then added weird, bizarre things like Demilich. So, and like I said, the logo, another one of my favorite logos, by the way, was done by Antti Bowman himself. I don't think I actually asked him how he came up with the logo because I actually met him a few times, obviously the times he played. Hoping to try and get him here on the chat soon. So I'm going a bit more detail about the band. I did mention him a while back about it, like 4 years ago. See if he's still up for it. Who knows? We can chat a bit more about the album, and if there's any new stuff, they might be working on new stuff. And I talked to people about this album and saying it's their only one, and like I don't like saying they don't think they need another one. It'd be cool if there was another album, but then this album's so well done and it's so weird anyway. I don't know how they can out weird and outdo this album, but it would be cool to see. They did release an EP in 2021 called Vanishing Sessions. So I'm thinking that might have been stuff that was written back then, or it's completely new stuff. I haven't actually heard it, but I will give it a good old listen and make my own little conclusions. But my overall conclusion of this, it's heavy, it's evil, it's technical, it's excellent, phenomenal, monumental, and that all important word, timeless masterpiece. Which, again, it got overlooked. And, you know, I know there's a lot of people that talk about an album that got overlooked, and it's a shame. And it is a shame, really, because, of course, there was a lot of great death metal albums come out in the late 80s, early 90s. But not all those that just got completely like pushed to one side and no one really talked about them. This is just one of many. And I've mentioned quite a few of them already in this series. And I've got so many more to come. So one more time in conclusion, and just to shorten it a bit more, is excellent, is evil, monumental, timeless masterpiece of Finnish death metal and death metal in general. And if you're not too familiar with it, then you should definitely. But all you veterans, you're going to know this album. But for anyone not too familiar with Demilich or Demilich, as you prefer, but if you say Demilich, Demil or Demilich, I love saying Demilich, just like how it rolls off the tongue. Do check out this album. Of course, this is the re-release. If you can find an original copy, then you get my respect right there. If you do have an original copy that you got back in the day, again, you get my eternal respect. And if you got some of the demos, that just gives you more points. Such a phenomenal album. Do pick this copy up if you also want to hear the demos, which I have heard on YouTube. And yeah, I mean, I'm all for physical media. Get a physical copy of this album. If you can find an original, great. If not, go on Schwartz Records. You can find it right there. So once more, this is Demilich and Nespithe on just what an album, what a band, and I want to see him again. And that is another episode of my Metal Vault. There are so many more because I'm looking at this page and it's still blank. I got obviously the 45th episode queued in. It's 2 albums by the same band. Might talk about those by myself, or I might ask Chris again if he'd like to collaborate. Of course, it's 2 early albums by a big band from Sweden. You can probably guess who I'm talking about. And yeah, and just thinking about it, there's going to be another album from Finland on here. And that album's just so heavy and crushing. And this album is crushing, but is very evil. Demilich, Nespithe. And let's hope I can find some more weird death metal like this. And another band I think has come close to, in a way, kind of replicating it is Blood Incantation, because they got like similar structures to their songs. But in terms of that, I don't think any band can really come close to Demilich in any way, because of just how far out there and how so far ahead of its time it was when this album was first released. And it's, yeah, 31 years old. And it's still going to stand the test of time. 40 years later, still going to be standing that test of time. And I have so many more to talk about in this series. So thank you very much for tuning in, as always, to all of you out there who have been watching this series for a while. And there's always going to be brand new people. So again, welcome to my channel. Welcome to this series. And be sure to check out the other series that I have. I will be getting my next death metal albums video out soon. Just going to write out what albums I'm going to show and go from there. So once again, thank you very much for tuning in. Be sure to like this video, share it around, comment down below if you have anything to say about this album, what your overall impressions of this album, or you just want to say it's an excellent album. And even when you saw him live, you veterans out there, when did you first see him live? And just anything else you want to say about the album. And most importantly, don't forget to subscribe if you want to keep up to date with everything that I'm doing, to pretty much keep up to date with everything that I'm doing on this channel, because I have so much more from other series I have. But for this series, this seems to just been taking off since I first did that episode with Bulldozer. And again, so much more heavy metal, thrash metal, death metal, black metal, doom metal, sludge metal, folk metal. So much more excellent stuff from the 80s and 90s, also the early 2000s. And then I'm going to go to the late 60s through to the 70s in later episodes. So thank you very much for tuning in. I've been Jacob Jake's Metal Chat. Keep that banner of metal held high, and I will see you all again in my metal vault.